Alright, YouTube, for this vlog, I'll be talking about Star Wars 10, 11, 12, which I'm really excited about, but for this vlog, I'll be more talking about ideas I think will happen and that I think would be good for happening rather than entirely hypothetical. But starting with first option, I think, and Star Wars Starfighter hits the nail on the head of having a really cool, well-known, and diverse cast. So I think if this trilogy does continue with that throughout episodes 10, 11, and 12, that'll get two thumbs up and, be well received because Star Wars Starfighter seems to be getting good reception and everyone or a lot of people seem to be excited for it, so I think it can learn good from that. Another thing I want to see is also, more characters from Rebels and Clone Wars or any live action series come to the big screen, but what really stood out to me and think could be intriguing is if characters from Clone Wars, not to be confused with the Clone Wars, but the retcon Clone Wars 2003, which is my favorite two Star Wars movies. So if we see some elements from those two in this trilogy, that could be fascinating because I think a lot of people don't even know Clone Wars 2003 exists or forgot about it, which they're missing out. So I think seeing some of that incorporated with Rebels and the Clone Wars could be fascinating. Another thing I want to see, and I feel like this wasn't utilized well enough in the prequels, was the Gungan underwater city. Seeing more of that or more of something like that with underwater could be fascinating because we've all seen the desert planet, so it could be cool to take it to another level and go deep under the sea and under the water. So another thing I'm really excited to see is Rey Skywalker or Kenobi or Palpatine, forgetting exactly where it went, but her arc could be fascinating to see her training the new order of Jedi. But I get the impression this trilogy will be focusing, and I get this impression this trilogy is focusing a lot more on the Jedi than with, dog fights, space scenes, and the Andor-like government aspect. But seeing those two elements in Star Wars is, of course, fascinating and would do well. So overall, I think the villain could be someone we haven't seen yet, but that is, or we have seen yet. I don't know who the villain could be, but I do think one thing that the prequels maybe would have been a little more fascinating is if Darth Maul was a villain in all three of the episodes. So if we do something similar to that, have a main antagonist throughout all three rather than one throughout each individual, that could be intriguing. And I hope we also see flashbacks and more sequel lore. So overall, I'm excited for this trilogy. And another thing I'm excited for is the Mandalorian and Grogu, seeing some of the live action bounty hunters come to the big screen, or animated bounty hunters come to the live action big screen, I meant to say. So seeing something similar to that in this trilogy is going to be fascinating. I also hope we see Grogu, but if we don't, I'm sure this trilogy will do its own great thing. And last but not least, I hope it kind of takes place throughout a lot of time period, because although I do like the sequels, one thing I felt is that they happen too close together, which is not a big deal, but I think seeing sort of spread out time creates more opportunities. So until then, thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned more soon. Goodbye.